Hey guys, thank you for coming today. My name is Rafsan Jugo. I'm the communications lead for the Yukon Employees Union. I'm going to start off with the land acknowledgement. The Yukon Employees Union respectfully acknowledges that we live, work, and learn within the traditional territory of the people of Wildland First Nation and Taan Kochang Council. Now, before we begin off, there's a few housekeeping notes for the media. There's some workers here who may not necessarily want their photos taken. Please play it by ear. If you're taking photos of people in the room, ask them. Some folks may be okay with it, some folks may not be okay with it, so treat them like human beings and take it on a case-by-case basis. But everyone that's on the stage, everyone that's speaking in a public capacity, they are all fair game. If you have questions, please raise your hand. Initially, I'll be introducing the folks, then I'll be opening up questions to the floor and especially to the media. You'll have 2 questions and 1 follow-up. And depending on how long this goes, we may open up the floor towards the end, but we have a strong deadline of 10:35 a.m. And there's a few promotional materials that we want to highlight. We have a lot of training happening at YEU. We have shop steward orientations happening. If you are someone, not everyone may be lucky enough to have a great relationship with their employer, and the shop steward orientation training, it allows you to help yourself and it allows you to also help your fellow coworkers. It's a couple of days, you know, if you're on the clock, your wages will be covered by the union, and it's great training. You can meet like-minded folks and you can acquire skills to better protect yourself. And there's also roundtables happening. There's different topics for every roundtable. You'll meet other shop stewards. So do check out yeu.ca. If you go to the top right of the page, there's 3 lines. You click on it, and then a panel should come up with shop steward resources, and that should be able to help you out. We have secured funding for the laundry project for the rest of the year. It is a free public laundry night that happens at the Family Hotel Laundromat every month, and we are looking for volunteers. So if you want to help out with this project, please do check out our website and reach out to us if you want to help volunteer. And we also have a letter from Minister Richard Mostyn printed out and laid down on the table towards the left. This was a response sent by the minister to Jim Reginbold in relation to the presumptive cancer coverage issue. There has been instances where the government has accused us of misrepresenting what they're saying. If you don't want to take our word for it, you can take his word for it. The paper's right there. And I guess I'll start off with the introduction. So on the far end of the table, we have Justin Lemfers, the Yukon Employees Union president, Alex McPhail, Wildland firefighter and president of local Y034. And we have Jim Reginbold, a firefighting veteran with over 3 decades of experience, 14 years as the fire chief of the Dawson City Fire Department, 13 years as the president of Yukon Fire Chiefs. And, you know, he's someone who's had experiences in multiple aspects of this industry, structural, wildland, you name it. And lastly, we have the leader of the Yukon NDP, Kate White. So I'll hand over the mic to YEU President Lemfers.
Thank you, Rastin. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and thank you, other folks, for attending today. We're here today to talk about trying to improve protections for wildland firefighters. We've heard some information from this government, from Minister Mostyn, and we've got some questions and concerns. But really, I'm not the expert here today. The experts are these gentlemen that have had experience and live and work in this industry. So my goal today is to stay out of their way and let the experts do the talking. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you two.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Alex McPhail. I've been a wildland firefighter for 10 years. I'm going into my 11th now. Got into wildfire in Ontario in 2014 while I was studying in university. It was always my intention to work in a public service, and I originally had plans to go to school for structural firefighting. But while looking into that, I found out you could firefight in the woods, which is where I spent most of my summers anyhow, so I signed up for that immediately. Spent 4 years in Ontario. I moved back home to BC, fight fire for 4 years, and this is my third season as an officer for Yukon Wildfire. I love my work. I've had the pleasure of working with some of the best people I've ever met through this job. I've been based and deployed all over Canada, and I've had experiences, good and bad, that'll be with me for the rest of my life. The work is sweaty, dangerous labor in an environment filled with deleterious and unhealthy chemicals. Standard initial attack situation on a new fire has a crew or two arriving by helicopter or truck, unloading several hundred plus pounds of gear, and walking it all through rough terrain and smoke to surround a fire while the crew themselves is surrounded by flammable forest material. The fire burns out the roots of the trees, making each one a hazard that requires assessment that may fall, and those deemed hazardous have to be hand-felled with a chainsaw, which is statistically one of the most dangerous things that you can do for work. There's no avoiding the constant exposure to smoke, particulate, and soot, all of which are cancerous and produce negative cardiovascular and respiratory effects. While these chemicals are usually less concentrated than those produced by structure fires, the exposure is continuous throughout the season, and personal protective equipment is limited to gear that can be worn for 16-hour days of hard labor. That's all bad enough assuming that the material burning is organic plant matter, which is never guaranteed to be the case, especially as we get into fires that are more and more involving the urban-wildland interface. This is inherently dangerous work that comes with a human cost. We do seek to mitigate these dangers to the best of our ability, and we should continue to strive for better risk prevention. But there's no avoiding the fact that wildland firefighters are putting their bodies on the line for public safety and have been for decades. If there was a better way to do these things, we would be doing it. We're always looking to mitigate the human cost. The days end with soot ground into your pores, smoke in your lungs, and black snot coming out into Kleenex. We know these substances are carcinogens. The wildfire environment contains polyaromatic hydrocarbons, soot, volatile organic compounds, small particulate matter, airborne heavy metals, diesel fumes, etc. The list continues. These are all recognized carcinogens. The International Agency for Research on Cancer supports this. They consider firefighting as a profession, a carcinogen, and do not draw a line between structural and wildland fire. This is all compounded by the fact that fires are getting worse. They're burning more area, they're burning deeper into the ground, they're burning more non-organic material, and they're releasing additional chemicals into the smoke plume as they do. Fires become an existential threat to any wilderness-adjacent community, especially those in the boreal forest. We've seen what happened in Fort Mac, Lytton, Kelowna, Jasper, numerous other places. The threat is increasing, the consequences are increasing, especially in the north, and we need to build capacity to handle that. Consequences of failure on an organizational or even individual level can be multi-million-dollar costs and whole communities or even lives lost. We need a professionalized and experienced wildfire service, and the most critical piece of that is retaining our frontline firefighters. Experienced firefighters have the hard skills and knowledge to complete objectives faster and make safe, effective decisions, leading to saved taxpayer dollars, smaller fires, the smart application of prescribed fires, and safer communities in the end. Wildfire fighting, at its most basic level, may sound fairly simple, but like any trade, writing down the steps and being able to do them physically are two very different things. Inexperience leads to escaped fires and worker fatalities. People love this job. People travel across the country and live out of cars or in tents just to do this job. But at some point, the health risks, the financial burdens, and the time spent away lead most people to decide that they have to move up in the organization or they have to move out of the organization. If we want to retain good firefighters, we need to provide growth opportunities, financial stability, and we need to take care of them when they get sick, protecting our communities. We're here to talk about that last point, so I'll stick to that. People here do not feel that they will be cared for in the event that they get cancer from work. They look forward to lengthy and invasive proceedings while at their lowest point to determine if they deserve care for an illness that is a known risk of the environment that they work in. People joke about it with a morbid fatalism and regularly voice disbelief that we are so late in adopting presumptive cancer compared to other provinces and firefighting jobs. People with families or considering starting one worry what will happen to their loved ones if they continue working a job that may shorten their life. I have to think about that every day. We're asking people to risk giving up years of their healthy lives to protect our communities, and I think it's only fair that we take care of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. You covered most of my bio, but I'll just give you a bit of background to know the experience that I have in firefighting, and whether it's aircraft, wildland, or structural. Good morning. Name's Jim Regenball. Thanks so much for being here, and I'm so proud to have called Yukon home since 2005. I'm still getting over a bit of a head cold, so if I break out speaking French, that's just my Quebec heritage coming out. I bring with me 33 years in the fire service, including 16 years in the military, with 12 of those years dedicated to military firefighting. Trained in structural, wildland, and aircraft rescue firefighting, followed by 21 years serving in various municipalities across Canada. In 2003, I had the privilege of working as a structural incident commander during the Okanagan Mountain wildfires, coordinating closely with BC Wildfire Services during one of the province's most challenging fire seasons. Here in the Yukon, throughout my fire service career, I've also worked closely with Yukon's wildland fire management team in a range of roles in emergency incidents, building strong partnerships to protect our communities during increasingly complex wildfire events. For 14 years, I had the privilege of serving as a fire chief for Dawson City Fire Department, and for 13 years, I was president of the Association of Yukon Fire Chiefs. In that role, I worked closely with partners and stakeholders in advocating for and securing presumptive cancer legislation for Yukon structural firefighters. I'm a strong advocate for this important cause, and I'm passionate about extending that same protection to our wildland firefighters. As much as I've retired from the fire service, we must do better. We have a duty to protect those still on the front lines, including Alex, who's on this panel with me today and has many more years of dedicated service with Yukon Wildlands Fire. It's time we recognize that that commitment with the protections they deserve. Wildland firefighters are on the front lines of crisis that's only growing. Longer fire seasons, more intense burns, and increasingly toxic smoke. They risk their lives and their long-term health to protect our homes, our communities, and our future. But when they come home sick, when they come home with cancer, we turn our backs. And that has to change. Right now, Yukon wildland firefighters are not covered under our presumptive cancer legislation. That means if they get cancer, they have to fight two battles, one against their disease and another against a system demanding they prove their cancer came from their job. It's not just unfair, it's unacceptable. Yes, the Yukon government points to a lack of conclusive research, but science takes time. Cancer doesn't wait. Provinces like BC, Manitoba, and Ontario are waiting. They're acting. They're applying the precautionary principle, a principle echoed in Bill C-224, our new national framework that explicitly includes wildland fires and demands urgent action. This bill received royal assent back in June 2023. The bill wouldn't have passed if the research wasn't there. It's a national bill. We don't need to wait for 100% proof when we already have 100% risk. Wildland smoke contains benzene, formaldehyde, PAHs, also known carcinogens. Our firefighters breathe that in for weeks, even months at a time. They're not just being exposed, they're being saturated. And we can't let the Yukon government hang its hat on the myth that most of our wildland firefighters are only working in the so-called clean boreal forest. Fires don't burn clean anymore. They burn through our communities, vehicles, treated wood, garbage dumps, and anything in their path. Our firefighters are inhaling far more smoke from trees, and pretending otherwise is a dangerous justification for action. So here's what Yukon can do right now. Amend the presumptive cancer legislation to include wildland firefighters. Partner with researchers to track and study cancer trends in this workforce. And 3, invest in prevention, better gear, better protection, better support. Let me be clear. This is not just a matter of policy. It's a test of our values. Do we honor the people who step up when the smoke rolls in, who walk into danger so others don't have to? Or do we leave them behind when they need us most? Yukon has a chance to do what's right, not later, now. Let's stop hiding behind excuses. Let's lead with courage and compassion. Let's protect those who protect us. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. So I'm grateful right now to be sitting here with these two champions because although we haven't met, we have been working together in efforts to get presumptive cancer coverage for wildland firefighters. Presumptive cancer coverage for wildland firefighter was an unknown subject to me until I got a message from a friend in August of 2021. Up until that point, I had assumed that whatever coverage was afforded to structural firefighters would be shared with wildland firefighters. And I was surprised to learn that that wasn't the case. So when the Yukon had the opportunity to extend presumptive cancer coverage to wildland firefighters, as additional cancers were being legislated for structural firefighters, the Liberal government chose not to. When I was working with wildland firefighters, unions, and others across the country trying to get coverage for wildland firefighters, Richard Mostyn, the Minister of Community Services, was actively lobbying the business community to write letters against this change. Despite British Columbia, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia all having presumptive cancer coverage for wildland firefighters, the Yukon has still not followed suit. And this is shameful. So it's with immense gratitude and respect that I question why wildland firefighters do not have the same benefits afforded to other firefighters under Yukon's Workers' Compensation Board Act. Changes are long overdue to include wildland firefighters in this legislation. We need to recognize the hazardous nature of the occupation and provide support for the people who are involved in this aspect of public safety. So I've raised this issue many times since 2021. I'm committed to ensuring that wildland firefighters have the coverage they need and they deserve. In order to truly honor those who show up for us, I'm committed to showing up for them. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate, Jim, Alex. There's a few points that I'll just expand on. The work that Kate's been doing to try and hold this government to account and past governments to account on presumptive cancer coverage for wildland firefighters is so critical. We know what the needs are. And Jim touched on this when he mentioned the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle basically means if you believe that there's sufficient evidence that there's a risk, you act on the risk. And this government knows that they have information that demonstrates that there is a risk. There are so many reports that have said that exposure to the wildland fire products like smoke, particulates, carcinogens, increases your risk of cancer. So other jurisdictions, as we've heard, have already taken that action. They've acted both on the evidence, they've acted on the precautionary principle, but there's been an active decision not to do it here, an ignoring of the precautionary principle. The fact that these gentlemen are putting their lives at risk every time they go out into the field. For Alex and for his cohort, when they go out, they think about not only the fire they're fighting in the moment, but what Jim said, the battle that they might have to fight in the future because of the workplace conditions that they're exposed to. And when we think about the fact that this government has so often dismissed the evidence, they also make this differentiation between structural and wildfire. And somehow there's no overlap between those two. There's often the statement that the Yukon is built on mining. There is industrial activity and evidence of that activity all throughout the wilderness. The idea that this is pristine wilderness that is being burned with no other foreign particulates or contaminants is a myth. So if we're going to look at this honestly, realistically, we have to look at the fact that we live in a landscape that is touched heavily by industry and that there is no such thing as a pure, clean fire. So what we're hoping is that this government listens to the voices of the firefighters, listens to the pressure that's coming forward from the public, from the workers, from people that want to see these changes, and they do the right thing, that they act on the precautionary principle. They recognize the other jurisdictions that have acted. They know that science is not limited by geography. If it's good enough for BC, if it's good enough for Ontario, it should be good enough for our firefighters. And we're standing here asking them to take the action that's needed. And with that, I think we can go to questions.
All right, we will open up the floor to the media for questions. You get two questions and one follow-up. Please introduce yourself and the media platform you represent, and also the person the question is directed at. I will start off with questions.
away from the speaker so we don't get the feedback. I lost it. I'm so sorry. I lost it. Macklin, you want to go?
Yeah, my name's Macklin. I'm with CKRW. My apologies. I don't remember your two names.
Jim, Alex.
Jim and Alex. I guess my question is best suited for either of you. Do you know of people who have considered leaving the job because of the lack of presumptive cancer coverage?
Yeah, if I can jump in, Alex, absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to succession planning, recruitment and retention. What a step forward to keep people in, showing it's one thing to say we love our wildland firefighters, we love what they do, we got the most respect for them. We're not going to give them this. We're not going to simply amend the presumptive legislation to include this. So I've talked to many wildland firefighters in various, right from the grassroots, which keeps them going, fighting the fires on the ground, which is the only way to put them out, to managerial levels. And they want to see this happen, but they're leery about moving it forward because they don't want to lobby the government that they work for. And it's unfortunate. Lobbies always can be a good word. It's like no can be a good and kind word. But we have to move it forward for the right reason. And to your question, yes, I do know quite a few, whether it was in forest fires that I assisted with and helped them, to floods in Dawson City last year. And we had many closed rooms or around the coffee when no one was around, and they were blunt with me, but and I let them know they'd stay out of it, but I'll definitely advocate for them because this has to be done.
Yeah, take that and run with it. Absolutely is the answer. There's a lot of people that's a big concern for moving forward. It's talked about a lot. That's why I'm here. This is something that people are interested in. It's something that people feel that they need to have to be protected moving forward. It's a regular point of discussion around Yukon wildfire. The fact that we don't have it and the fact that people are worried for their future and their family's future if they should get sick.
Right, and just to build on that, obviously Minister Mostyn continues to say he's doing research, they're going to listen to experts on this before doing anything. How do you feel the Yukon government is treating this conversation around presumptive cancer coverage?
I can jump in on that one. I have to look at the other jurisdictions that have made the decision to act. And when there's already a body of evidence that exists, why does it take so many years of having the same conversation, of listening to statements in the legislature about how they're pursuing the investigation? Why are they not recognizing the actions of the other jurisdictions that have said, yes, this is a risk, there is a body of evidence, we can take the protections? Again, if they're relying on the precautionary principle, this is an easy answer. They should have made this decision long ago. The fact that they continue to be mired in inaction and use a growing body of research as a foil is a weak excuse.
I have some thoughts on this one. So it's important that when we go back in time and we look at 2021 when the legislation was open, and at that point in time there was a big push. We had Alex Forrest, who was with Structural Fire, national body, and of course the structural firefighters across the territory. They actually wrote in support about extending this legislation to include wildland firefighters. And the reason why it is so shameful that we're still talking about this now is that there was that opportunity. At the time, British Columbia was there, but like I've said, now we've got additional jurisdictions that have added presumptive cancer coverage for wildland firefighters. And it's shocking to know that Alex and his crews can be standing next to firefighters from Ontario like they were in the Ibex Valley, and one has coverage and one does not. And it's Yukon who doesn't. And the reality is when I, again, was trying to do the work to get this information, to get the support across the country, brought in letters from unions, brought in letters from folks like we have right here, the minister was working with the business community and fear-mongering, telling them that their rates were going to go up for WCB coverage. So he was getting letters against it. And it shows where the energy went, right? You could have looked at this. We could have said, yeah, there's a way around it. There was an olive branch extended from Alex Forrest and others to share the information that they had about rates and what it would do. I think the reality is when I have conversations with wildland firefighters, the reality is that their cancers will be, like, the coverage will need to be different. We need to look at things like, for example, skin cancer. You get put into the woods for 4 months of the year, and you're not necessarily wearing SPF 50 for 16 hours a day for those 4 months. So there's going to be research, but it's been done in other places. But ultimately, it's a matter of respect. Do I respect the work that is done? Do we respect the risks that are taken? Do we view them as critical? And the answer is yes. So why would we exclude this really important industry and the folks who are willing to take those risks for us from giving them the basic respect of that same presumptive cancer coverage?
If I can add to, and sorry, I forgot your name. Macklin, can you repeat the question again, just so that I...
Sure, yeah. So given that Minister Mostyn continues to say that they're doing research on this, he's going to listen to experts, and it's taken this long, how do you feel the Yukon government is treating this conversation around presumptive cancer care?
Sad. It's discouraging. It's disappointing. Out of respect to whether I was in the fire service as president of the Association of Yukon Fire Chiefs or whatever, I always gave the government of the day the first kick at the cat, lack of a better expression, at coming back to me. So I've sent a couple of letters to Minister Mostyn, and the inaction from him as the community services minister is not there. It's almost like you've got to prove the causation and what caused it. We'll allow the structural firefighters to put in presumptive cancer legislation. You're approved. But Alex, who's working right beside me in an urban interface fire, which there's more, people are always moving into the wooded areas. So the structural firefighters are working close with wildland firefighters. The days of them being separate are not there. So to have someone more or less just say, try your luck in the system, you can put in for it, it's not presumptive. So the pain that you have to go through fighting the cancer and then proving that you fought the cancer, and when you look back at the research, don't give me there's no research, it's out there. It is out there. This national bill wouldn't have been passed if there wasn't research. So to say that it isn't there, I don't know, or I don't know who his communication team is working for him. It's there. I've got documentation here. So not to move this forward, it's a simple amendment. We've amended, added extra cancers, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, being totally inclusive, but you can't include wildland firefighters in this. We work hand in hand. So I'm disappointed, and I'm discouraged that it's come to this, to try and get them to move forward on this.
Good morning. I figured it out. So this first question is going to be for Kate White. I'm trying to keep it brief, just being mindful of time. In a perfect world where the Yukon government changes its mind about all this and is willing to take this step today, how quickly could this amendment move through the legislature?
Yeah, I think unfortunately there's 11 days left in the sitting, and government needs to table legislation within the first 5 days. They could get consent of the House to do it. I mean, it could happen, but there has to be political will. The reality is since 2021, there's been no political will. So that is problematic. They could make a commitment right now that this is something that they're going to stand on in the next election. Let's be clear, there's a territorial election this year. This should be a priority for every single political party looking to represent Yukoners. It should be a commitment, but I would also caution that there's a track record.
Thank you. Thank you. And my next question is for Alex. for Alex and Jim. What could Yukon wildland firefighting look like in the coming years without presumptive cancer coverage? In a hypothetical where this is never going to happen, what could wildland firefighting look like in the territory?
I think partly what it looks like now, where we have retention issues and keeping employees around, and I suspect if it was put down that this was never going to occur, we would probably have a harder time retaining the staff that we already have that have stayed for some time. This is a huge concern for people. People put their lives into this job and realize that it may shorten their life and it may take away from their time. That's a huge commitment to make for people, to not be sure if you're going to be taken care of after that. And you know, when you're young, it's kind of easy to say, there's a risk. You know, risk can be fun. I like risk. There's no problem for that. But as you kind of get on years, you start building a family, you start getting situated. That matters a great deal to you. And a lot of us have been, you know, working in these conditions for decades, right? And that builds up over time. So you start thinking with each additional year, how much more am I exposed to this year? How much more is it if I do another 4 years? Is this worth continuing, or is it going to get worse and worse for me? So, you know, I think things would look more grim if this was put down as something that's never going to occur, for sure. And there's a big push for prevention stuff, which is great, and I'm all for it. And we should invest in better PPE and better situational awareness and, you know, avoiding the smoke and the soot as much as you can. But the reality for a lot of people who have put time into this job is that hasn't been the case for a lot of times that we've worked in it, right? So the exposure has built up continuously over time, and people are worried that when that bill comes due for us, we're not going to be looked after. And I think that weighs on people's minds every year they come back.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think definitely Alex hit on all the key points, but recruitment, retention, succession planning, all that's out the window. I mean, we have passionate wildland firefighters going into work every day. The passion's going to lose. The sense of place is going to lose. You're going to leave your brain outside, leading to more accidents, hopefully no deaths. But you're just going to just show up for the paycheck and leave, and that's not what wildland firefighters do right now. So it's nice, and I love it when the politicians say, hey, we love what you do. We couldn't get along without what you're doing, but we can't put this into policy. So I think it's all try your luck. Lip service as far as what I see right now, and it's we have to do better. And you know what, we can do better. The research is there. Moving forward on this national bill, there's Bill C-224, which I keep going back, there's $12.5 million invested in this, 6 different pillars. One of the pillars is wildland firefighting. And yeah, there's not a lot of research in wildfires and wildland firefighting and cancers because there's no data collected. You need the data collected, so you have to start somewhere. So don't say the research isn't there. It's there. We have to move on it, and we have to protect the people that, as much as I'm out of the service, I've hung up my hat, I'm still there advocating for this, and it has to be done. So back to your question, I think we're going to lose firefighters. We're going to probably have to bring in people from other provinces and territories that really care about their wildland firefighters. Thanks for that question, too.
I'll expand on that as well. It's not a hypothetical to say that there will be loss, because as other jurisdictions adopt these changes and move forward, we will start to see people leave the Yukon for work that respects what they're bringing, not just the fact that their work is recognized as inherently dangerous, but there's going to be long-term impacts. We've been able to obtain data on the use of casual workers within fire management, and the fact that we've seen over the last 5 years hundreds of positions staffed by casual workers is an indication that there already is a recruitment and retention problem. So this isn't a future problem, this is a now problem.
All right, guys, that's all the questions that we have for the media, that wraps up our press conference. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.